you want to start?
Yep, live now.
Okay, welcome to the Node Foundation CTC meeting, the 11th of January 2017. As usual, we're going to start with our stand-up, then we'll have a review of the past meeting, and then we'll delve into the agenda for today. So starting with the stand-up, first up is, I'm just looking for the first person who's here. I don't see Anna. I think I see Bradley, you're first.
Sure. So, we got some final confirmations about the opinion of things on ES modules that we've been waiting for pretty much since September. So we're going to discuss that this meeting. That's why I'm here.
Okay, sounds good. Next, in terms of people who are here, I think I see, let's see, who is it?
I think it's me.
Okay.
So I did a new release of libuv, opened a pull request to Node for that, opened some other pull requests, and then mostly just reviewed other people's issues and pull requests. Next is probably Evan.
Yeah, I cut setting up 4.0, submitted a small doc PR, done some PR review, and then still trying to knock out passing the buffer to crypto.random bytes. Next is Jeremiah.
Hey, so I rebased my promises when they have unhandled rejections, throw errors on GC or program exit pull request. I don't think many people have seen that. The GC handlers no longer appear to work. Perhaps that is a fault in how the new sort of weak handler API that I had to switch to is being used. So I'm waiting for a response from V8 people on that. And then I've been talking a little bit with Bradley about modules, and that's kind of about it. James is next.
PRs, landing, reviewing, work on the HP2 implementation, and working with others on improvements to the new URL implementation, and getting that documented to advance the process forward on moving it out of experimental. I don't have the list in front of me, so I don't know who's next.
I think it's John.
Unfortunately, not much to update this week. I've been doing stuff internally. Next is Michael Dawson.
I scheduled the benchmarking workgroup meeting, which is happening this Thursday. I did some work to help configure our Jenkins jobs so that the CITGM team can launch and modify their own jobs. Likely to do something similar for the postmortem workgroup as well. Ongoing work with the ABI Stable Module API effort. Participate in a few meetings like the LTS meeting. Trying to chase down a few AX issues to make sure that we're getting them investigated. And then just general issue review, comment, and landing. Next is Brian White.
Okay, not much for me this past week. Just the normal reviewing PRs and commenting on issues. The next is Ali.
So I've been doing some triage of sort of V8 backports, doing some backports upstream and doing some in our repo. Not much else. Next is Seth.
Hey guys, let's see. We're just mainly getting ready to branch for V8 5.7, which has been mainly a hassle because of getting some WebAssembly stuff taken care of. But I believe, although let me quickly confirm that promise hooks are also in 57. And I don't have the sheet in front of me. Who's up next?
Trevor's next. Trevor, you're still on mute if you're talking. Okay.
Working on the only things of note are working on async hooks tests with Torsten and hammering those out, and then catching up on some miscellaneous issues and doing some PR reviews. Rich?
Hi, all the usual stuff, test updates, doc updates, but all pretty minor things, fixing a flaky test here or there, helping some people get their first contributions happening, tools update, doing a mini code and learn, I guess you could say, tonight in San Francisco, if anybody listening is interested. And usual PR and issue review. Hey, I think that's everybody. Let's get to the agenda. Yay.
Okay, so next on our thing is just a quick review of last week's meeting. So we talked about landing NPM 4 into Node 7. I think the outcome was it was going to go into master, and then there was general agreement to go back to 7. Console log and util format should support the %i integer. I think there was some discussion, but that ended up going back to being referred back into the PR for further discussion. Same for timers, clean up extraneous properties on immediate 10205. The next one, deprecate old debug protocol 10320. Believe there was agreement that we would do the docs deprecation immediately, and the discussion was started about getting the actual runtime deprecation in place as well. Restore copyright attribution 10155. I don't think there was too much more discussion on that. Process add code to warnings, assign codes to deprecations. I think that one 10116 was mostly a heads up to ask for people to go and take a look. Deprecate old debug protocol 10320. That was part of the discussion on the deprecating the old debug protocol. And then finally, 174, update the copyright. I think again there was some more discussion, but really it's back to GitHub to close on that. I think right now we're basically waiting for feedback from the lawyers in terms of what we do. So that's a review of last week. Let's jump then into the agenda for this week. So still on the agenda is 10505, landing NPM 4 into Node 7.
That went out in 7.4.0, so I don't...
Okay, so I guess that we just need to take off the agenda because it's done.
Yeah, I have kind of been keeping an eye out, and I haven't heard any complaints or pushback or problems. I don't know if anybody else has.
Nope, just the opposite. I've received feedback from folks saying that everything's running great.
Okay, that's good. So I guess we could just take that off from the CTC, like remove the CTC agenda tag.
Already happened a day ago. Evan did it. Yay.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so on to the next one.
On NPM4, did anyone actually contact the NPM team at all to watch for reports on their issue tracker too?
I did not. I have been looking on their issue tracker. I haven't seen anything, but it would probably be good to reach out to them.
Okay.
I'll do that.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Okay, so moving on to the next issue, 10292. Console log and util format should support the %i integer conversion. I know we discussed that last week, so I'm just going to open it up. Does anybody have any updates?
Shouldn't this be removed from the agenda?
Yeah, I think that the decision last week was just to move it back, the discussion back into the GitHub issue.
For which one is it? I'm sorry.
10292.
Oh yeah. I don't believe there's been any resolution that I've seen, and I don't think there's been any further discussion in the issue tracker that I've seen. So. Okay, so
unless anybody disagrees, I think the resolution on that one should just be to remove the CTC agenda for now, which I've just done. Okay, moving on to the next one. Timers, clean up extraneous property on immediate. I think last week we closed with a suggestion that there be a vote in the issue. I'm just opening that up to see if that's been happening. I know that I'm pretty sure it has because I seem to remember commenting myself there. So I don't know, in terms of closing out on this, I do see there's a number of votes. Do we want to see where we stand and see if we can close it out with the people, anybody who hasn't voted already here, or do we want to just ask people who are here to go back and comment in the issue and close it out there?
What was talked about last week was that we would open up for a vote and we would finalize the vote today.
Right, okay. Try and do that then. Let's just look through and see if we can count. I don't think there's any summary of the votes yet.
Yes, there is. It's right at the top, and we do not have enough votes. We need more votes. So who hasn't voted?
So who hasn't voted? Is anybody here? Brian, I think Brian and Trevor, the two of you are on the not voted yet list.
Just open it. I'll vote it at the end. I'll vote on it at the end of the meeting.
Okay.
Actually.
And looking to see if there's anybody else. Have we got everybody who's in the meeting here?
Now that would put, if Brian, if you and Trevor vote, that would put us at, let's see, 12. That would put us at 15 votes, which should be enough to resolve, because it's definitely form.
Okay, just voted for.
Here. So we got a vote for by Brian and a vote for by Trevor, so it passes. Okay, resolved. I'll remove the agenda label, and Jeremiah, you can go ahead and land this when you want to.
Okay, that's
Okay.
good. The next one is 10116. Add code to warnings, assign codes to deprecations. I think, James, you were the one who added that.
Yep, I've gotten some review. It's December major, so I need sign off from CTC. It's gotten some review. Some of the conversation has kind of gone off in the weeds on part of the unit wording API. It's causing a little bit of noise in the thread. I just need a clear decision whether this is something we want to do or not, and I need CTC members to give it a sign off so I can move forward.
Okay, so you're still looking for more people to jump in and see, say, like +1 to the concept.
Yeah, and to give it a sign off. Now, the part of the PR is a new documentation page which lists all of the deprecations. Most, probably about 90% of the messages in there just come directly from the error logs. I fully recognize that some of that documentation can be improved, but the intention is to do that in subsequent PRs and not to rabbit hole too much on this PR on the specific wording of individual deprecation messages.
Right, okay. So basically, let's get it in as is and then improve. Okay, so any more discussion we need here on that?
We raised the question last week if anybody had any objections to this idea. I would say it again, anybody looking at this or considering this have any thoughts that we should not do this, we should not go this route? If not, I would ask, if you don't object to it, I would ask that you please get into the thread and at least post a comment saying that, okay.
Yep, okay. Okay, so moving on to the next one, 7964. I'm going to have to open that up because I don't see a summary of what it is. Okay, this is meta. So this is on the deprecation policy. I guess this is related to that PR, right? Is that related to 10116?
The deprecation policy.
It's more closely related to the timers one because we had a conversation about, we don't really have a good policy around what constitutes Semver major.
Right, yes.
Yeah,
okay.
Yes, 7964 is an old PR that I recently updated it. We haven't had a very clear deprecation policy documented. This is an attempt to get that documented. At this point, there's nothing we need to decide here on this call. It's just we need folks to look at it, weigh in, and so we can iterate and get a policy that we're all comfortable with, and then get some sign-offs on it. So I'm not in a huge rush to get this done, but it is something we need to get done.
Yeah, I see four approvals, one.
Yeah, sorry. I'll re-review now that the change has been made and update after this meeting.
Okay, so basically I think it's, if people have objections, they should, go in and comment. Otherwise, it looks like there's enough reviews to actually have it land. So.
But this isn't like an EP. This is actual like
policy change.
hard-coded document. Is this something that would need a CTC sign-off?
Yes, it's a change to the collaborator guide. That formalizes the deprecation policy. Specifies what types of things have to be deprecated, which things are okay, what types of similar major changes can be made without deprecation, what constitutes internal versus public API for the sake of identifying what things need to be deprecated, that kind of thing. So it is definitely something that CTC needs to sign off on, which is why I haven't been rushing on getting it landed.
Right.
But to make sure that we are all comfortable with it.
In terms of sign-off, that just means that nobody objects and you get enough LGTMs from CTC.
I don't think that's right. Hang on. I believe the governance document says that this would, in my opinion, would constitute change to governance, and I believe the governance document says that governance changes have to be voted on, but I'm not sure. Let me take a quick look.
Yeah, okay. It would be good to double check that. I thought most things were, as long as the consensus was going in the right direction, we're good, but could be wrong.
Okay, so here's that the governance document merely says that changes to governance must be discussed at CTC meeting, CTC meeting, but it doesn't say that a formal vote is required.
I'm going to be back in just 1 sec. I have to see if my daughter needs to get in the house. Hold on.
Yeah, we have made other changes to things like the contribution guides and stuff like that without a vote. My hesitation on this one is that the deprecation policy is so important to get right that we need to make sure that everyone is reviewing it. So if there's anyone who feels this is controversial, then I would prefer to call for a vote. But if everyone just looks at this and nods okay, or if we can iterate on it to a point where it's something that everyone's comfortable with, then we can proceed without a vote.
Yeah, I think unless there's objections or disagreement,
it's certainly been open long enough.
Yeah. There are some things in here that are different from the way we've done our policy in the past. For example, this policy allows documentation-only deprecations to land as number minor. We've always treated those in the past as number major because it's a deprecation. But there's always been a question about whether that's necessary, and we've had a number of discussions about whether taking it on a case-by-case basis. This policy would explicitly allow for those to land as a number minor as long as there's no actual functional code changes.
So
it also introduces the specific concept of end-of-life code. So not just a hard a runtime deprecation, but code that can be identified as okay, this can be removed now. And we've had some instances of that, like the string interface for FS, for one of the FS methods just recently got removed. This explicitly covers in policy, how end-of-life code is covered, that kind of thing. So there are some very distinct differences that we really need to make sure everyone is comfortable with.
The one person who does have a, I don't, requested changes, has the little red X next to the review name, is Trevor. And it looks like all the things that Trevor commented on have been updated, although I don't know if they've been updated to his satisfaction.
Yeah, I have it open after this meeting. I'm going to reread it and then either sign off or leave comments. Sorry, I haven't gotten to it before this.
Yeah, no worries. I'm behind on a whole bunch of stuff, so I can't fault anybody for that. So it's something I want to make sure we get right.
So like I said, I'm not in any particular rush to get this in. It's just something we need to make sure we do.
And so I guess that's a call for, it would be nice to get even more people doing, more than regular, you'd like people to sign off. So if you look at it and say it looks good, add your LGT onto it. Okay, anything more on that topic before we move on to the next one?
Nope. Do we want to remove that from the agenda or not?
I would leave it on the agenda because I want to make sure that it remains visible until we get it closed.
Okay.
That'd be my preference.
Okay, so the next one is update copyright statements 10599. I guess, James, do you have an update on that one?
I sent an email to Michael and Rod formally requesting that they ask the legal committee at the foundation to review. I have not received a response from that. I have asked Rod to clarify, to verify whether or not there's been any activity, and I will continue to follow up. There has been some feedback on the updated copyright, just with regards to some specific wording that may no longer actually have any meaning, and we can tweak that a little bit. We need to make sure that we are all okay with the revised, the revised one. I think it's TR 10599. If I can get everyone, all CTC members to weigh in on that one. I would. I think we are for something like this. I think we would be required to do a vote, and I would certainly call for a vote for this one to make it absolutely explicit, if that's what that we accept that or not. But the main blocker right now is waiting for legal committee review. We cannot proceed with anything until we get a response from the legal committee.
Right, so we're waiting to see if what's there is acceptable.
Right.
And if anybody does have objections, it's probably good to raise them sooner than later.
We can't even land the 10155, the restoring the original copyright attribution, without legal committee review either. They're telling us that we have to do it, but we need their okay to verify that what are being proposed here is correct, because I don't want to make the situation worse. So we're kind of in a holding pattern right now.
Okay, so basically 10599 and 10155, which are both here on the agenda, we need them to get back to us, and so we'll leave them on the CTC agenda, and next week see where we stand.
Yep. Okay.
And I guess 174, I think, is updating the copyright as well. I'm just going to double check that. I think so. Those are. I doubt there's anything different to discuss on that front.
Yeah, that's the tracking issue for the two PRs. So,
okay.
Okay.
So we're through the things that were on the agenda. Were there any other things that people wanted to add to the agenda before we move on?
There are items that have already been added to the Google Doc.
Okay. Yep, I'm going now. I see some more.
Under ES modules.
The next, I also see one directly below the Node.js CTC. So growing the group of releasers. CTC issue 48.
Yeah, so this is my issue. It's been a long time since we added anyone with new release perms. So I figure we might as well grow that group a little bit at least. And just for context, these people don't need to be CTC members. That's always been the case so far. Unless we, for whatever reason, were to change our mind on that, I doubt we would. And I think two people have seemingly put up their hands. Gibson from IBM and Italio Casas, who helped. He hasn't put up his hand in the thread, but he helped make the 7.3.0 release proposal, I think. And I talked to him a little bit about that, so we can contact him in that thread. but we will need a CTC sign-off for either of those people to get release permissions. So that's up for us to discuss.
Okay, so let's start with are there any objections?
No objections. I would definitely like to see just make sure that both of these individuals are able to shadow somebody who, while they're doing a release first, before we actually add them, because I want to make sure that they feel comfortable going through those steps, before we actually make that decision.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that'd be pretty much
There's some
required.
drivers.
Go on.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I think someone else helping them with their first release is pretty much required because there's still a number of things that can go wrong when you do a release regarding anything that might go wrong with promotion or keys or anything. It's definitely important to have someone there. Rich?
No, I was just going to say that, like, I think that we're kind of stating the obvious. So yeah, definitely.
So if we don't have people objecting, do we want to have a vote of the people who are here to +1 on each of those individuals? Do we have enough people, or should we open issues?
I would do a vote after they've we've confirmed that they do want to help, and 2, after they've shadowed at least one release.
Oh, you mean shadowing a release first? Okay. Yeah, I think we could do that. So we can go back to the thread and re-ask those people and go from there. I think we probably also need to then contact the build working group because that has to do with key things, and I think they are generally a little bit more in tune with how all that works. And yeah.
So I agree we should wait to confirm they're interested, of course. I'm not sure, should we wait to vote until they've done the shadow? Like, it'd be a shame to have them go through the shadow and then for some reason have the vote not pass.
Do we even have to vote, or is it just consensus?
Right.
Okay. It's consensus. I don't think we need a vote. And shadowing is really just more or less, making sure that they feel comfortable going through the steps and doing the release themselves.
Well, exactly. Like, I don't think that's going to be so it'd be more of a, do we have consensus that yes, provided, these people are interested, we should move forward?
Yeah.
I'm treating this more like informational, like Jeremiah's coming to us and saying, hey, I got these 2 people who want to be, who want to, do this. Stop me if you want to stop me, but otherwise I'm going to go ahead and, arrange for them to be able to do this stuff. And that I'm fine with all of that.
I think
that makes sense to me.
I think in the past, all previous people were voted on, just for context. Not that we need to.
I think that we should vote, and I say that because, like, a release is a little bit different than a commitment, in my opinion. I mean,
all right, let's call for a vote then.
Yeah, I'd like to call for a vote just to make sure that everybody's on the same page.
Do we have quorum here, or are we going to need to open an issue as well?
We do not have quorum here. We need at least 10 people 11 people for there to be 11 CTC members, excuse me. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So yeah, we definitely don't have enough here to close a vote.
Right.
So
do we want to call for the vote here anyway, just to get those numbers recorded and then close through an issue, or just push everybody to the issue?
Well, if we can, we have 9 people here. If we can get 9 votes recorded, that'll get us a long way towards,
I agree.
Will be helpful. So I would say let's just do it really quickly here and now.
Okay, so I'm going to start by asking for objections. No objections. I think in the past we've done it by asking for +1s in the chat. Does that work for everybody today?
Sure.
Okay. So if everybody could put their +1.
And if anybody, I guess we're voting on both people, and if anybody wants to split their vote, they can say so.
Agreed.
Is there any reason we wouldn't just put votes in the issue rather than putting it in the sidebar?
You can put it there too. I mean, it's going to end up there anyway.
Yeah, we were just going to take the summary and put it there, but if
Okay.
everybody wants to put it directly into the...
Yeah, and just to be clear, the vote is for extending the invitation, right?
Yeah.
Yes, that's fine.
So we're getting votes from the sidebar. Do we want to summarize? You know, I can do one post that summarizes the in-person vote, or do we want to actually ask everybody to go and directly do it in the issue?
Would somebody mind just clarifying also what the exact vote is for?
The vote is to invite the two people identified, so Gibson and who was it you said, Fishrock?
Itelio Casas?
To become releasers and give them, you know, the access that's required to do that.
In technical perspective, that means having their public key be one that the release server allows you to promote to and sign from.
They also need a GPG key, don't they?
Yeah, that's what I meant. That's what I meant. I'm not sure. There might be two keys involved.
And the vote is that they should do that even before the initial shadow, or the vote is that they can do that after the shadow?
That we will invite them, and there'll be a process, including a shadow, and you know, doing ones with somebody else to get them to the point where they can do it themselves, right?
The shadowing is essentially just part of the onboarding for becoming a...
Got it.
All right, we have 6 votes. I don't know what's happening, but I think that looks like probably all we're getting. So.
Okay. I'm just going to add that into the. So I'm adding into the item itself that Michael Dawson, Colin Herrig, Evan Lucas, James Snell, Rich Trott, and Ali Sheik have all voted +1 to extending the invitation to the invitations. Okay.
I'd like to move that we table any further discussion of this because we still have modules and that has a tendency to consume all time available.
Yeah, I'm going to move forward with this in the thread and make sure both people are interested and that stuff. And I'll also put my vote in the thread there when, yeah.
Okay, real quick, do we need an explicit +1 like typed out, or does the little thumbs uppy thing also count if we're a CTC member? Do we have, I don't think we have a policy on that.
Since we don't have a policy on it, I'd say just put a +1 in just to be sure.
Okay.
So this actually raises another point, and you know, I just want a quick question because I can go work on it and we can discuss it later. But there has been other questions just recently about what constitutes an acceptable vote or not. Whether, you know, because I did a -0 and then I explained what that meant. Would it be beneficial to actually have a clear description of how votes happen and what counts? Like write that up.
I don't know. It seems like we you know, you did the -0. I was like, hey, is that an abstention or is that an against vote? You clarified it was an abstention and that was the end of it. I don't know that we need to really document that necessarily unless it's really causing problems.
Well, I mean, I wasn't going to say anything else, but you know, with Trevor's question about whether the thumbs up counts, right? It might be good just to get a little clarification, a little bit of documentation around it. So I'll think about it. Anyway, I didn't want to derail the conversation. Let's continue.
Okay, so let's move on to the next one, which is under Node EPS. So this is rewrite 002, Node EPS full 39. Just going to open that up. Does anybody know whose that is? Who added it?
That's mine. Bradley Fadius. So yeah, this actually was made after July's meeting with TC39. Before we went back to TC39 in September. So I'm basically here because we've had the results come in mostly for what the VMs can or cannot do for us, at least on V8's side. We had some talks a while ago with Chakra as well, and I presume they are unchanged, so I haven't really investigated that. And James and I talked with V8 on Monday, and so we have some talking points to discuss regarding things that need to change in 002, which is the node draft that was accepted for implementing ES modules. There's a link to the talking points both in the Google Drive doc and on the issue for this meeting. So the big one is the champions for ES modules and V8 have misgivings about property delegation on variable access for imported variables. So something like import read file from FS. If we have property delegation, which is currently what Babel does, it basically does module.exports and takes a property off that whenever you use an imported variable. That's something that we talked about wanting in September. It doesn't really look like it's in the cards. Part of it has to do with how CodeGen works. For V8, they have a single pass CodeGen that's done all up front. So in order for them to do this sort of property delegation, they were stating they would need to pessimistically guard against side effects for all variable access for imported variables. That would include even ES module to ES module variable access. So any imported variable would suddenly basically be wrapped up with the side effect guards. So they can't be inlined or anything like that. There's also the temporal dead zone problem. If you don't know what the temporal dead zone is, for let and const and things, there's a concept of if you try to use something before it's been initialized, it has error-like behavior. If we allow named property access at all, even if it's not via property delegation, to CommonJS imports, you don't know the list of things that a CommonJS is exporting until evaluation time, so you have to, during the linking phase for ES modules, assume all those variables exist. Once you get to the evaluation phase, when you finish, you'll see it doesn't exist, and that's the first time you can throw the linking error. So it changes the guarantees of linking ES modules from being able to link and guarantee there won't be any linkage errors at parse time to runtime. So basically what this is saying is named property imports from CommonJS pretty much are not in the cards. So this means we won't have something that looks like Babel as it exists in Babel 6. Newer implementations, including a PR for Babel and the release candidate for Webpack 2, don't do named imports from CommonJS modules. So they ended up doing this because it was the safe route even if they didn't get named imports, there was always this idea that if CommonJS generates a single default export, you have a known shape, it'll be available given the current accepted draft or the rewritten draft from July. So people are starting to move away from named imports from CommonJS for transpilation. And I'm starting to see Twitter issues as people are using release candidates. Okay, so now that we've gotten the idea that we can support Babel exactly as it exists in Babel 6 out of the way, we need to have a very frank and very terrifying discussion about async versus sync loading. So the temporal dead zone problem has some to deal with this, and it also has to deal with if we're looking for forwards compatibility with the web or backwards compatibility with Babel. And yeah, that's what I'm going to summarize it as. James, if you want to say anything, you've been in similar meetings as me.
Yeah.
Can I just ask one question? To clarify, Bradley, you said at the end CommonJS is a single namespace export, and we're expecting everybody to access any what would have been named imports and things through that. Is that what you were saying?
Yes, they will have to go through the default property of this faux module namespace object.
Now that I will clarify. I mean, that's hopefully a point in time statement. You know, in the call that we had the other day with some of the VM folks is they recognize that the ability to do named imports from a CommonJS is a reasonable goal, and they'd like to try to figure out a way of getting there. But with the current situation, the current spec, the current implementation constraints, it's just not going to be feasible right now to do named imports from CommonJS. So the only way will be if you import from a CommonJS, the only way to access that will be through the default export. That, you know, the way we were discussing it on the call the other day was that would be phase 1, right? And hopefully we'll get to a phase 2 where we can move the ball forward. On the point on async versus sync loading, there's still an open question there that I think that we're still going to have some conversations at the upcoming TC39 meeting on, but everyone seems to agree that while the file IO that actually loads the bits module can be will be async, that the actual evaluation can still be sync. So even for things like the import function that returns a promise, the evaluation of that code would still be synchronous.
So I'm just going to clarify. Dominic got on me today and is arguing that it doesn't have to be sync. So that's a different discussion.
Yeah, I mean, it just comes down to we're going to need more discussion about whether, you know, what parts have to be async or can be async, which parts can be or have to be sync or whatever, and we just got to work through those. We're getting closer to resolution, I think, and it is unfortunate that things like the named imports are looking like we're not going to be able to do those. But it's I think it's good that we're getting closer to a resolution. So. That's all I have.
So I'm going to briefly discuss the quick high-level summary of differences between async loading and sync loading. Whenever I'm talking about something async, just assume I'm talking about wrapping it in a promise somehow. Whenever I'm talking about sync, expect it not to be wrapped wrapped in anything. It just acts like require would, or how you would expect Babel 6 to work. Async loaders. So they're what the web is going to do. In particular, they maintain preserving the order of evaluation for any given dependency graph. The spec does not mandate that module evaluation itself is synchronous for the entire depth graph. Technically, you can implement things. It doesn't have to be top level await, but there are other ways to kind of yield the module loading thing so that you don't block the web browser's main UI thread and stuff like that, where you get into cases where there are gaps in time between evaluation. And this is somewhat important if you want to prevent jank on a large module graph for web browsers. This async loading, since it's wrapped in promises and everything, could, in theory, support a synchronization mechanism like top-level await, where doing asynchronous operations during load time is possible because you can have parallel loading in an async loader. So even if you are doing some sort of asynchronous operation, other stuff can be going on in the background. The way these loader works, it works in the current ECMA 262 spec, no changes. So we're not talking about trying to land any new implementation feature beyond what web browsers require, and no need to go to TC39 to implement them. So we talked briefly about temporal dead zones earlier. There is a temporal dead zone that exists between circular dependencies if you have a synchronous loader that doesn't exist if you have an asynchronous loader. We don't have a lot of time. I'm going to basically state it as, if a common JS requires an ES module that has a circular dependency on that common JS, since the ES module will evaluate before the common JS module, you don't know the shape of the common JS module, and it creates this temporal dead zone where you're just guessworking. Asynchronous loaders wrap ES modules inside of promises and execute asynchronously. So even though the common JS is the parent module, the ES module will never read the shape of the common JS module until after it finishes loading when the event loop turns. So synchronous loaders. Okay, synchronous loaders are basically what Babel 6 has. They act more along the lines of common JS, which is what Node has always had. So no changes in expectation of moving from a synchronous loading system to an asynchronous loading system. You can expect require ESM to have some minor changes from Babel 6, like we said, default only from common JS is going to be in any way that loads a faux ESM. There's also some changes about mutation because Babel modules don't properly implement mutation, and the variables within Babel modules are not always live, but they need to be live for real ES implementation. Oof. So, but in order to get this, we do need to land a TC39 spec change, which is basically this proposal which we got to after the September meeting that introduces lazy and late linking, which basically adds a dead zone for us to use. Right now, the spec doesn't allow there to be a dead zone during the linking phase. So yeah, I don't really have a lot of time. I'm just gonna sum up. We need to have a discussion about if we want to take the synchronous loader path or the asynchronous loader path and the advantages and disadvantages of each. we may want to set up a separate meeting for that.
Yeah, I think we're
That's-
pretty much out of time for this week, so I think an issue and then possibly a meeting where you get interested parties would make sense.
Yep, I'd agree. And just to remind everyone, there is a TC39 meeting in a couple of weeks where this is no doubt going to be discussed further. It would be great if anyone has any concerns or anything that that you feel needs to be discussed at that meeting. I will be there. I believe Bradley is going to be there. Miles has also said that he might show up. So we can help represent some of those ideas. I'll be back to see.
We're also sending Anna there, right?
Sending who?
Anna?
Yeah, she might be. I wasn't sure what the status of that was, but it would be excellent if she was.
Okay, so I think we're just we're down to 4 minutes, so I think it's at this point, I guess, if we should be on the lookout for a meeting invite and issue to continue the discussion on the async versus sync. Is that correct?
How's that going to be distributed? Is it just going to be emailed to us like normal, or are they going to set up one of those like little everybody check a box when the best meeting time is thing?
I'm open to scheduling either.
Yeah.
The doodle might
Anyway.
help to get the most people.
Let's just try to have the call before the next, within the next couple weeks before the TC39 meeting. So.
Yeah, makes sense. Is it Bradley you're going to set that up, or James who's got the ball for that?
I can do it. That's fine.
Okay, so I think we'll move on to the last part, which is, are there any questions from people who are watching on the YouTube stream?
Yeah, if anyone has questions, we'll keep this open for a minute, and you can put those into the YouTube chat or in Node Dev on Freenode.irc. We'll look for those for a minute, and we'll answer them if there are any. We'll go over the meeting times right now, if someone has that up.
Yeah, there's a CTC meeting in a week, obviously. And it's going to be for CTC members, it's going to be at a new time. It's going to be at 5 o'clock UTC, which will be 9 p.m. Pacific time in the United States, in Canada. And TSC meeting tomorrow at the same time as this meeting, 8 p.m. UTC, which is noon in San Francisco. And benchmarking meeting is 1 hour before that tomorrow. Streams meeting is an hour before that tomorrow. And the HTTP2 meeting is an hour before that tomorrow. So we have four streamed meetings in a row, starting at 5 p.m. UTC with HTTP2. So if you can't get enough of listening to Node.js people talking about issues with the project and trying to make decisions and move things forward, you have a marathon tomorrow, so prepare your popcorn.
Are there any questions coming in yet?
No. I still have a couple people watching. No questions, and I did a solicitation for questions earlier, so I think we are probably good. Stream delay is usually no more than 20 seconds or so.
Okay, well, I think if we have no questions then, is there any other business before we call this meeting a day?
Might be good for people to stick around in case there's private matters to discuss.
Okay. But I think we'll close out the regular meeting.
All right. Thanks for watching, everyone.